So I've been on a roll with RWBY videos the past couple of weeks. I've been surprised that 3 episodes of Ice Queendom have given me so many ideas for videos, and chances are I'll have more ideas as the series goes along. Today, I'm talking about one of my favorite things from RWBY Ice Queendom, Yang. If I think any character has benefited the most from Ice Queendom, it would be her. Not only is she in some of my favorite moments in Ice Queendom, but she's also one of my favorite characters. Next to Weiss, but I already talked about her previously. However, seeing Yang in Ice Queendom got me thinking, is she better than the original? While I will say Yang has benefited the most, she's also the most different of the 4 RWBY girls compared to their original versions. I slightly mentioned a few differences in my first impressions video, but I didn't discuss which version of Yang was better overall. To answer that, I'd say it's Ice Queendom Yang. However, the real question is why I like this version over the original. This video explains why I say Yang is better in Ice Queendom than the original. At the same time, I will be fair and only compare Volume 1 Yang to Ice Queendom since episodes 1 through 3 are retelling Volume 1. I will mention Yang in future volumes during this, but you'll see why when we get to that point. So let's start with the original version of Yang. Like every girl in Team RWBY, Yang made her debut in her own trailer. I know I said I'd only talk about Volume 1, but the yellow trailer doesn't change anything about Yang and only gives us a look at who she is. So how would you describe Yang? As we can see, Yang starts off wanting information on a person who we later find out is her mother, Raven. We also get the idea that Yang loves fighting based on how she smiles before taking on Junior's men. Finally, we see her get angry and enter rage mode after she sees some of her hair ripped off. Also, the end reveals that Yang is RWBY's older sister. So there's a lot to work with Yang as a character. Just off this trailer, you're wondering why she's looking for this person. You also got to see her fighting and can make assumptions about it. You can view her as someone confident in her abilities that will take on any challenge, or go the opposite and view her as someone cocky that's full of themselves. My point is that this trailer was great for Yang's introduction. It gave you a lot to work with, and something fans would want to discuss as they got ready for the series to premiere. I'll also go the extra mile and say that the yellow trailer was the best of all 4 reveal trailers. Let me explain. RWBY's trailer involves her fighting a bunch of Grimm all at once. There's no context to why RWBY is fighting them, or even who RWBY is. It's just making RWBY look cool and nothing else. At the same time, I've also heard this trailer is only a dream sequence, which I believe. Out of every trailer, this is the only one that isn't referenced later in the series. Not only that, but Monty even admitted at an RTX panel in 2013 that RWBY was acting out of character, and the trailer was more to show off RWBY's weapon, Crescent Rose. Weiss's trailer involves her singing and fighting a giant suit of armor. Again, there's no context to why she's fighting that armor or singing. We don't even know what she's supposed to be fighting in this scene. Is the suit of armor a type of Grimm? If so, why doesn't it have white armor like every other Grimm in the series? I will credit one thing about the white trailer. The song Mirror Mirror that plays in the background and the one Weiss is singing is subtly about her, and I enjoy small details like that, which you might not notice the first time watching. Blake's trailer involves her going on a mission to steal dust from a train with Adam. I will admit, out of every trailer, this is the best one in terms of looks. However, Adam steals the spotlight for me while watching this trailer. He's the one leading the way and the one to defeat the giant robot he and Blake were fighting. Imagine if we saw Winter in the white trailer defeat the giant suit of armor Weiss was fighting, and Weiss was only doing a support role. Again, it's more of a me thing. I can understand if you didn't have that reaction. My point in talking about all this was Yang did appear to have the most potential based on her trailer. It showed some of her personality, gave context to her actions, and didn't have the spotlight stolen from her. You'd think she'd have a significant role once the series aired, right? Well, this is when we finally get into Volume 1 and my problems in terms of Yang during it. Volume 1's first episode involves RWBY stopping Torchwick during a robbery and meeting Ozpin, who offers to let her come to Beacon despite her being younger than most students. We also see Yang, happy that her little sister is coming to Beacon with her. I mentioned the part about Yang ditching her sister in my first impressions video, but there are moments between Yang and RWBY showing their relationship as sisters during Volume 1. I'm also okay with the ditching as it is only a joke, and I can understand the older sibling wanting to be with friends their own age. My problem though is that Yang mostly does nothing during Volume 1. I rewatched Volume 1 to find something to talk about Yang during it. For the most part, there's nothing. She does have more moments between her and RWBY, and is comic relief at times, like her going crazy after Grim cuts one of her hairs, but there's nothing of note during Volume 1. Again, compare her to the rest of Team RWBY. RWBY had the moment between her and Ozpin where he told her what it takes to be a leader. Weiss had a moment where she learned being a brat about RWBY being the leader wasn't going to change anyone's mind and only make them think they were right. Blake had a moment where she revealed that not only is she a faunus, but she used to be in the White Fang. All three had a moment in Volume 1 that focused on them and gave them a spotlight. The only member of Team RWBY to not get that is Yang. It feels weird that Yang didn't get her own time to shine as everyone else did. Some might say they could squeeze it in, but here's the thing. They still found time to do that with the other three. At the same time, the example I gave of RWBY and Weiss happened in the same episode. Why couldn't they have Yang share a moment like RWBY and Weiss, or even Weiss and Blake? I know Ice Queendom does that, but I want to hold off talking about that for now. Before that, I want to address another argument someone might bring up about why Yang didn't get any moments to shine like everyone else. That argument is that maybe they didn't know what to do with Yang, which I disagree with. Like I said about the Yellow trailer, it showed that Yang was looking for her mother. What about hinting Yang was doing this in secret and we got to see RWBY and the others worried because they knew she was hiding something? What if that was when Yang was serious despite coming off as the one that's carefree and always smiling? It could have given more depth and made you interested in why Yang was obsessed with finding her. Instead, her looking for her mother isn't mentioned until Volume 2, and the one time they're about to talk, RT decides to pretend it never happened. Yes, I'm always going to hate they chose to do that. My point is there was a lot they could have done with Yang, and they decided not to. So I've talked about what I disliked about Yang in Volume 1. However, this video is why I think Yang in Ice Queendom is the better version. So what did Ice Queendom do that made me like this version of Yang more? I won't go into too much detail about this, since I said it in my first impressions video, but I enjoyed Yang pushing her sister to make new friends. I also liked that it showed Yang and Ty's conversation about RWBY always depending on her and how that could be bad. It feels like they wanted to make Yang into just a protective sister who's always trying to look out for RWBY. We also don't know much more about her, so they could still have her wanting to find her mom or take her in another direction. Either way, it didn't build up my expectations, but gave me something I still enjoyed. They also added more moments to her doing stuff, which improved another character's moment. I'm referring to Episode 3, when Weiss and Yang try to find Blake. In Volume 1, Yang doesn't do anything of note while trying to find Blake. She does bring up how cruel Weiss is being about Blake, but she's passive when confronting Weiss about how she feels about Blake.
You really don't care if we find her, do you?
Don't be stupid. Of course I do. I'm just afraid of what she'll say when we find her. The innocent never run, Yang.
Now compare this to her confronting Weiss about the same thing in Ice Queendom.
ファウナスってだけで憎むなら、それこそあんたは差別主義者よ。
私は確かに言い過ぎたかもしれません。でもあの組織は
組織の話とかもういいから。
The difference is night and day when you look at both of these scenes. One treats Weiss like it isn't a big deal that they're mad at their teammate. The other calls out Weiss for being a bigot. It also makes more sense that Weiss does tell Blake it doesn't matter after having someone like Yang call her out for her behavior. Plus, in this episode, I love that they added Yang calling out Weiss for something else.
あんた全然心配してないでしょ。どうせうちの妹とも仲いいふりしてるだけじゃない？二段ベッドが憧れとか適当なこと言ってさ。
It adds more to why I love Yang in this version. Weiss does come off as uncaring, and it's easy to assume she wouldn't want Blake to come back. At the same time, Weiss was also being a jerk to RWBY, and as I said, Yang is protective of her sister. I know I said in my Weiss video I understood why she was mad. However, understanding why someone is angry doesn't mean I agree with how they handle a situation. Weiss could have talked to Ozpin about RWBY not being a good leader, or brought it up to RWBY herself, and could have been respectful in either case. Instead, she chose to yell at RWBY about being a lousy leader, and talk to her professor about being the leader instead. Weiss may be my favorite, but she deserved Yang calling her out for how she acted. Again, it makes it feel more earned when Weiss has a change of heart when someone like Yang calls her out instead of casually bringing it up in a passive tone. Not only did it give Yang something notable, but it also helped give Weiss another notable moment that makes more sense now. Everyone will feel a certain way when comparing the original to Ice Queendom. Some will like the changes it made, while others will feel the original is superior. However, my question was only this: which one involved Yang making a more significant impact? For me, it's Ice Queendom. Ice Queendom gave Yang more of a spotlight, despite having half the time that Volume 1 had. It's one of the reasons I hate the excuse of we couldn't fit it in or we didn't know how to write for this particular character. These clips I mentioned were only a few lines of dialogue and helped give depth to one of the series' main characters. Ice Queendom may do the opposite for the rest of the season for her or anyone else. However, as I said in my first impressions video, I'm trying to stay optimistic about what could happen next. For now, I'm happy about the direction they're taking Yang, and I'm excited to see where they'll go from here. Now, I turn the conversation to all of you. Do you think Yang and Ice Queendom is the better version, or do you think the original is better? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to see more of my content in the future. Also, since this is my third RWBY video, and I'll probably make more, I decided to make a playlist of all my RWBY videos moving forward. As always, I'm Marco Strange. Stay safe, stay strange.